All right, welcome in everybody. It is Final Four weekend. I'm live from the Final Four. I'm in Indianapolis, right over by Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Rob Bino, I was at Hinkle Fieldhouse last night for the first time in my life. What a place. Tremendous bucket list arena. If you're a college basketball fan, I suggest you get there at some point. And I'll be at the games we're going to talk about tomorrow. I have weaseled my way in. I may be watching from outer space, but I'll be in the building. So looking forward to that. Two huge games. We're going to talk about them both on this show. Arizona, Michigan, Yukon, Illinois. We're also going to talk about what we now know to be the NIT championship game. Tulsa will play Auburn on Sunday in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And we have a crown tournament still going on out in Las Vegas. We did semifinal one yesterday, and then we'll talk about the other semifinal as well as potential final matchups today. Rob Vino, welcome in. Yesterday was a day I wish I could have had back. It was one of those days. My 5% on Illinois State lost. I'm not mad about that because the fate of Auburn has been a money printer in the NIT so far. So, I guess all good things come to an end at some point, but I'm upset with myself for leaving off Tulsa, leaving off West Virginia, although that was a miracle win by the Mountaineers, and even leaving off Kraton, which you and I both talked about on the Wednesday show, kind of thinking that it was the right side, and sure enough, it was. They won and covered all numbers. So frustrating night for me in hoops, but hey, I got to go to Hinkle Fieldhouse, so I guess I leave a winner. How did your night go last night, Rob Vino?
College hoop was good. We had 3-1 yesterday, and the loser, obviously, what we talked about here on the show with the Tulsa, New Mexico game over, didn't happen. You and I were just talking a little bit off air about the way that Tulsa won that game, which was interesting. No doubt. I thought Bouillon would be a huge factor for the New Mexico offense. Tulsa took the interior away for the most part. Like I said, when we were talking off air, you had mentioned they were the more physical team. It did look that way. You wouldn't expect that out of Tulsa when they needed a big three. They got a big three. It wasn't their best shooting performance, really not even average, or probably a little less than average for Tulsa. So we'll see if they can come back and play better offensively in the championship game against Auburn. Also had the Kraton team total over. Huge second half out of Kraton. Got them to 82 points. I think they scored 51 in the second half, which got that one home. The West Virginia game, as you mentioned, wow. 2.5 left. Looks like we're dead. But West Virginia rallies, gets home. And then the final one was one we used here in the parlay on the show, the Auburn game over the total. And I think the assessment there was correct. Illinois State just couldn't handle them offensively, and Illinois State was going to have to score in order to try and win. They just couldn't score enough. Auburn, unlike a couple of previous games in this tournament, Adam, they created even further margin in the second half. They didn't give it back. They opened it up. So it was a nice 3-1 night for me, and we'll see if we can keep that rolling here today.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to start things off in, I guess, what we would call the feature game. It'll be semifinal number 2, but according to Ken Palm, it's like the game of the century. So let's get to that one. That's going to be Michigan, Arizona. Rob, I will piss someone off every year come Super Bowl time and come to Final Four when, I get it. Listen, these are awesome games to watch and awesome games to bet. And every year I'll make the statement that this game, when you're a sports bettor, this game is no different than Manhattan Canisius in the middle of December. It just isn't. And that always gets people upset, Rob, because, listen, and I got to shout my friends out at Basket Under Review. That's, of course, Matt Winnick, who you guys saw last week fill in for Rob, the 3-man weave guys, and it's a whole bunch of people over there. If you want that game ripped apart, every possession dissected, that is a great place to go and find that. They do tremendous work as guys that really break down the nuts and bolts of basketball. From a betting standpoint, I've gone through this game so many times this week. It's part of the reason I didn't want to talk about it till today. I really, truly think you're splitting hairs if you are trying to bet the side in Michigan, Arizona. I think I could come on here and make a really good case for Michigan. And I think there's someone out there that could make equally as good of a case for Arizona. It is just where we're at in the season. If you want what my number is for this game, Michigan minus 0.9. I'm pretty sure it opened 1, and I don't think it's moved a whole lot. So, Rob Bino, I would be flipping a coin if I bet this game on the side. I'm not the totals guy. You are. So, can we find a way into Michigan, Arizona, Final Four?
Yeah, it's difficult. And like you say, Adam, if you started to handicap this once the matchup was known, you probably have gone back and forth in your mind 100 times. Yeah, I think that adds up to Michigan. No, wait a minute, this adds up to Arizona, etc. They're basically they're mirror images, except for the fact that Arizona does not use the three nearly as much. And that's been their MO all season long, right? They really haven't used the three, but boy, when they use it, it's efficient. They make their threes when they have to. The front lines are the front lines. The matchups are the matchups. Maybe you could argue two of the best front lines, the two best front lines in the country. I know Florida would have something to say about that, but again, arguably, you could sit there and make the case for Michigan. You could sit there and make the case for Arizona. I have been amazed all season long that Arizona, with the key contributions that they get from three freshmen, just continue to roll on. Like, these guys are not phased whatsoever. And they're led by Jaden Bradley, who I've gone to the rack for 100 times on this show. One of maybe the most undervalued or underrated or under the radar, however you want to call him. He just doesn't get national recognition that other point guards get, but yet he's the steadying force to this team. Sidewise, you're absolutely right, Adam. It's going to come down to, or at least on paper, it comes down to, this is it's so easy to say, but it's so true. Who makes shots? I mean, in the end, who makes shots in this game, or who turns it over more? Neither team is prone to turning it over. Neither team is especially prone to taking it away. If you want to go through the saber metrics or the analytics or whatever you want to call them, of a 3 is better than a 2, then maybe you like the Michigan side. I think total here at 157.5, and I've debated this back and forth because you're going to see the Final Four is like a survival mode. And unless this thing hits overtime, I think it's going to be an under. The defensive capabilities of both are very visible when they want to be. Arizona especially, I think, does have somewhat of a defensive edge in this game. Not major, but there is an edge there to the Arizona defense. They've played that way all season long. Michigan has gone in stretches where they play really solid defense and stretches where they just, basically outscore people. The tournament path for both of these teams, I'll just end with this, has been, I think it's, opposition power rating wise, it's in favor of Arizona. Arizona's had the tougher road to get here than Michigan has. Michigan's played opponents that have been smaller. They played opponents that only know one style of play, run. They played the weaker set of opponents. So maybe, again, I don't even know if I can incorporate that into a handicap, Adam, because if Michigan had played Arizona's opponents, which I'm saying were tougher, I think they were, Michigan could have run right through those 4 as well. So what are we saying here? I don't know that it really comes into the handicap. I think my initial lean here today, as we talk about it, is to play this game under. I think you're looking at something in the 78, 75 range. I think between 153 or 152 and 155 is probably the high point for this game. And, odds makers do set it a little bit high because people love offense and they'll continue to bet over. It's been bet up from 157 to 157.5.
My guy Colin in the chat is he said fade Adam, but that's if you were watching the Total Basis show, Rob, someone in the chat, first of all, Colin's my guy. He watches all the shows, and someone in the chat said that last show, so I got mad and gave out one of my client plays. So that's like apparently, that's I got annoyed and I was like, oh, you want something to fade? Here you go. This is what I bet today. I long story short, I don't have one to do that with here. If I gave Michigan out, go ahead, fade it. If I gave Arizona out, feel free to fade that. I don't think you have a better or worse bet either way. As far as the way I see the game going, Rob, you could be on something with the under just because, both teams are really good at like not letting you beat them down the floor in transition. And I know like both of these teams like to do that, right? So like Michigan, they get a rebound. They're trying to find that early offense. Can they get a transition bucket? Can they get down and get a shot? Well, Arizona doesn't really let you do that. On the other side, Arizona likes to do the same thing. Michigan doesn't let you do that. Michigan's going to shoot more threes. Are they going to make more? I don't know. Maybe. Is Michigan going to be able to keep Arizona from getting to the rim? Probably not. Right? Like good, great offense usually beats great defense if it comes down to it, right? Elite offenses, if you've got elite offense, elite rim offense, I don't know that there's anything Michigan can do to just totally keep Arizona from getting to the rim or getting a rebound and scoring that way. This is maybe Ken Palm's right. Maybe this is one of the best games. He's got this as the highest rated game ever. I think I saw. He puts a thrill score on the game. I think it's the highest rated game of all time per his website. And you know what, Rob? I can't really argue with that. It is like, I truly think this is the equivalent of just a great heavyweight fight. There's going to be adjustments that can be made in game. But again, how do you even bet this in game, really? Because I think both of these coaching staffs and both of these teams are capable to adjust to what the other is doing. So just for really being at a loss here, I'm going to roll with you and say under makes more sense because I think they could shut off the outlet to transition. And if you can do that, if you can eliminate transition, you would have to have an insanely efficient shooting performance to get it over the total.
Last thing, Adam, and you kind of hit on it, and I unmuted myself to go ahead and see if we could find anything between the coaching matchup. Dusty May, Tommy Lloyd. Dusty May was here with Florida Atlantic once already. Maybe he learned a little something. He had an overmatched team at that point and coached them all the way to the Final Four. Tommy Lloyd basically has had talent before. I'm not going to say he's had this much talent, but it's been Arizona type talent, but failed in most of the spots here. Dusty May versus Tommy Lloyd. Any edge? You like either coach better?
Man, I don't. Again, not enough to come on and say matter of factly like I give this team an edge. Maybe in our next game that we talk about, I'll have more of an opinion on a coaching edge, but this one, no, not really. I mean, I like Dusty May personally. I'm a Dusty May guy. So to answer your question, I guess the slightest of edges to him.
Yeah. Game of the century.
It might be the game of the century. Let me bring before we move on to the semifinal number 2, or semifinal number 1 technically. Let me bring Manzi in. He says he's on. I'm on the under in the Michigan game as well. Michigan had the perfect setup for 90+ points. Has had the perfect setup for 90+ points per game. I think what he's referring to is over the course of this tournament. Yeah, listen, Arizona is going to pose a much more difficult, threat defensively than anyone Michigan has seen so far this tournament. Can't deny that. Tennessee had some size, but Tennessee was so far gone in that game early that I think they just kind of gave up a little bit. So might not be the best barometer. I think Arizona is going to be a much tougher test than that. So yeah, it's going to be a phenomenal game. All right, Rob, this game, the second final, well, it will actually be the first of the 2 games. This one goes in the semifinal number 1 spot. I think there's more to find a way in here, in my opinion, to this game. Illinois, Yukon. And so I will apply the question you just asked do you give one of these coaches an edge? I got to give the edge to Danny Hurley because, and I've said this, well, I know Joey Cheese is in the chat. He thinks I hate Yukon. That is not true. Although I do think Siena matches up well with them. I said that right from the beginning. I think my guys would have given you a game just like they gave Duke a game, Joey. That was his comment in the chat. But I do not hate Yukon. And in fact, if you go back to our shows, some of our very first shows, I've stated on a number of occasions that I think Danny Hurley has the best coaching staff in college basketball. I think he's arguably the best coach in the sport, but I think he has the best staff in the sport. And so if there was ever a game where I think a coach in the Final Four could outgame, like, can Danny Hurley out game plan Underwood and win this game like that? I think he could. I don't know if he will, but I think he could. I absolutely think that UConn, there is a route where Hurley puts a game plan together. The Florida game from last year comes to mind, Rob. That was a Florida team that won the NCAA tournament last year. And he totally out game planned Todd Golden. He was at arguably more of a disadvantage than he is here. And if a couple shots fall, UConn wins that game. So, yeah, UConn can absolutely win this game. And if they do, it's going to be because Danny Hurley just put on another clinic. The question for you is, will that happen?
Well, the one, I guess, extra thing we have with this game is we have an early season matchup between these two that we can use as somewhat of a historical guide here for this season. Way back around Thanksgiving time in Madison Square Garden, obviously more of a home to UConn than it would be to Illinois. But UConn did win that game. Two healthy teams, 13-point Connecticut win. Connecticut pretty much shut down the Illinois three-point shooting, which would be a key to this game. Illinois was 6 for 29 in that contest. However, I would somewhat preface that by saying that was prior to Keaton Wagler becoming Keaton Wagler. You know, it was when Boswell went down and all of a sudden Wagler was putting up 30-plus point games, 40-plus point games, and we got to see how good he really was. It's a unique team. You don't get teams like this with two, I would say, NBA point guards. Obviously, Wagler is going to be a lottery pick. I think Boswell could find his way into the league. He's a defensive hound. He's Illinois' defensive head of the spear, so to speak. A couple of things here. You have to find a way. I talked about it yesterday. You have to find a way to try and limit Terrace Reed underneath. Illinois does have size. But I don't know, Adam. The bulk that Reed has and the tear that he's been on, I don't know that either of these Ivisic brothers can contain Reed inside. On the other end, what you'd like to do, because those guys can shoot threes, is you would like to draw Reed away from the rim. And UConn's they're nowhere near the rebounding team without him underneath that they are with him there. So maybe, Brad Underwood, yeah, we give Danny Hurley a coaching edge here, but we don't want to slight Brad Underwood either. Very good head coach from his Stephen F. Austin days all the way through Oklahoma State, now Illinois. He's been good. They have playmakers deluxe. Stojakovic, I think, is an unheralded scorer. Very, very under control most of the time. Can score at all three levels. Ben Humrickhouse comes off the bench and can hit threes. I mean, Illinois is deep too, but I'll go back to what I've been saying all season long about UConn. Their quality depth is really, I'm trying to think of a team off the top of my head that goes 1 through 9, but the backup at every position, if you bring them in, it doesn't really mean it's a significant downgrade. UConn can go. They can sustain or withstand foul trouble because the guys behind the starters would be starters other places in the country. I think the only position I might not say that at is Alex Caraban's position. They need Alex Caraban on the floor. And obviously Reed, down to Rebe, the freshman center, it's a downgrade. But UConn's got quality depth everywhere. I tell you what, Illinois is one of those teams 2/3 of the way through the season, and I said this on our live reaction Sunday selection show, that 2/3 of the way through the season, I thought they could be in this place, Final Four. They sort of slid, were forgotten about a little bit, but now they're showing us again that they can be that team. I would like Illinois, if not for one thing, they don't force turnovers. If there's one thing Connecticut does is they're loose with the basketball. But Illinois is like in the 300s in turnovers forced. And in that game against Yukon earlier this season, they forced 10, but it wasn't enough. They still lost by 13. So to me, because Illinois can't take real advantage of the one solid weakness that I think Yukon has, I would favor Yukon in that game. Here, 139.5 is a pretty good total in my estimation. You can make the case. I think it's only half a case, but you could make the case. They both play slow. The tempo is going to be rock fight tempo. But I would counter that with, honestly, I don't care how slow teams go. I really don't. If they're as efficient as these two are. Illinois is the number one offensive efficiency team in the country. So who cares how slow they go if they're scoring every time down? It doesn't matter. So I think at 139.5, that's a tough total to bet into here one way or the other. But I do think UConn probably ends up being the right side here. Just in my estimation, too many guys, and Illinois doesn't have, or at least they haven't shown all season long, the ability to really get up on you. Like I'll use an example that you use all the time. If they had like TCU guards that were going to get up on you, I would like Illinois because UConn's loose with the basketball, but they don't. So I'll lean UConn here. And total, I'm still working on. I don't really have a good opinion there.
Yeah, I lean UConn as well. I make them a very slight favorite in this game. During the regular season, I don't know if it would be enough of an edge for me to get involved, but like as far as Final Four edges go, it's probably as good as it's going to get. Matt Winnick, who was our fill-in host, Rob, while you were out of town. First of all, I shared all the. You guys really liked him. I'm glad we were able to get him on as a guest. I saw him at Hinkle last night and shared all the good feedback from his couple of appearances. I want to read his tweet though, because I think this is kind of what you were hitting on, Rob. This was a tweet he posted the other day. He said the Illinois UConn first game, the game one from earlier this season, might be the biggest throwaway game of all time in terms of like, you should not be trying to make a comparison to that game. Petrovic played more than Wagler. I think that's what you said. Lee played more than Jake Davis. Eric Reed played more than Terrace Reed. And someone in the chat says Terrace Reed is the key to this game. I would agree with that. Terrace Reed was basically not going to play in that first game. He was injured. I think he was battling like maybe a back injury that kept him out for a long period of time. And he's looked really good in the tournament. Jalen Stewart played more than Braylon Mullins. Well, Braylon Mullins makes UConn a lot better offensively, in my opinion. And obviously, Braylon Mullins is, just hit the shot of his life. So maybe some carryover from that. My favorite part of this tweet, though, Illinois' current starting lineup played 0 minutes together in that game. UConn's current starting lineup played 1 minute together in that game. So, maybe you throw that first game out completely. I think that's what I kind of agree with that. And then, maybe it just comes down to, and I'll pull up Kadeen in the chat says, championship pedigree might come in here. Listen, I was on Duke -5 on Sunday. I thought I made a very good bet, all things considered, until about the final 10 minutes of that game when I realized I was on the team that did not know how to function in that moment, right? With the lead, game, championship is on the line, and suddenly there was one team that was far more poised than another team, and that team was the team that's been there before, with the coaching staff that's been there before, and UConn was able to pull off that win. Now, you're not getting the 5-point cushion here, but you're getting what? Two, and are we at 2 still, Rob? 2.5?
I see 2.
I think it's 2. Yeah, you're actually probably starting to see some 1.5s. Again, it's not something I've bet yet, but if I was going to bet either of the Final Four games, I'd have to say it's probably going to be UConn plus the 2. It is the way I would look in this game. And people are agreeing with me, saying they make Yukon the favorite. Yeah, I made them like a minus 1.7 favorite on a neutral. Joey Cheese thinks every venue is a home venue for Yukon. He says Stores South. I think he might have been referring to the Garden. I'll tell you what, though, before we move on, that's not going to be a home venue for Yukon. There is tons of Illinois people here. I think the crowd will be pro Illinois. Of any of the four schools, I think you're going to have far and away more Illinois fans than anyone else. It's like a hop, skip, and a jump away from Illinois.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And Husky Nation travels for sure. A lot of the reason, because if you live in the state of Connecticut, you have the money to travel, so they will travel.
Yeah, right.
But I will say this to Joey Cheese, just being a Connecticut native and growing up there for 32 years and still having family there. If they do win, from probably Norwalk, my hometown, all the way to South Windsor, where my son resides now, that's near Massachusetts, you'll hear a lot of cheering in that section here. Great game, Adam. I know people are referring to, and we said it almost jokingly a few times, but it could be true that Michigan, Arizona is being billed as the pseudo national championship game, right? Whoever wins that is going to win. But Illinois and Connecticut is a great game. On a normal Final Four, you might be calling this the greater game, and the team that wins the national title. These are four very, very evenly matched teams, and be interested to see what happens here. But I do like a little bit of Yukon in that game.
Rob, before we'll get it, we are doing our very last show for the season for Full Court Press will be Monday morning. So we'll reserve championship game talk for Monday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. But like, I feel like there's a big time, like, the market just assumes the winner of Michigan, Arizona is going to win the national championship. And I'm curious to see how that permeates throughout, like the odds makers setting a number for the championship game. This might be a scenario where the better spot ends up being on Monday night, not so much here, because I think you're going to have I think everyone's going to have that thought process. I think everyone's just going to assume the winner of Michigan, Arizona is going to win the championship game. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to run numbers through my head. I'm with you there. You're going to pay a premium for Michigan or Arizona come Monday because the odds makers know where the money's going to come from. And I'm thinking in my head, if it gets to a place where, they have to open this thing 4.5 or 5 because they expect a flood of money, then that's, getting 2 full possessions with Illinois or Connecticut against either one of those. We'll see where they do open. But I would think, just off the top of my head, I would have to believe that it's going to be at least 4.5, 5 in favor of Michigan or Arizona come Monday.
All right. Since we are not doing a college basketball show this weekend, we are going to talk about the weekend games the best we can. Some have spreads, some don't. The game I want to go to now, Rob, is the one that we were kind of talking about at the top of the hour when we came onto this show, and that is the NIT final. Tomorrow, this is going to move to Gainbridge Fieldhouse, home of the Indiana Pacers, where the Auburn Tigers will take on the Tulsa Golden Hurricane for an NIT championship. You know what? I gotta say, I bet there's going to be a lot of people at that game tomorrow. I think they're going to have no problem putting people in the Gainbridge Fieldhouse because everyone's just hanging around with nothing to do between games. So it's like people are just going to be hanging around Saturday to Monday. And it's like, hey, you can go check out an NBA arena and see the NIT final. I got to say, before we get into this game, Hinkle is the perfect place to do the NIT. But, man, having the NIT in the same city as the Final Four just seems like such a genius move, because you just have people that are here to enjoy basketball that are down to go to the games. And then you bring in some of the people from the other fan bases. I kind of hope I don't know. I'm torn now because I think Hinkle's a perfect venue, but Rob, I hope the NIT follows the Final Four next year to wherever it's going. Like, It was like it's made the perfect weekend. And because of that, I guess just to kick off the handicap of this, I think you're actually going to get a pretty good crowd for the final at Gainbridge Fieldhouse tomorrow night. You talked about it at the top of the show. Auburn was just too much for Illinois State, the physicality and size, athleticism. But Rob, they also hit every shot they threw up. I mean, they made Andy Lang couldn't believe it. He's like, is this team ever going to miss a shot? I go, no, I said, we are very much cooked on Illinois State. They are shooting 70% right now. And I just didn't feel like they were going to slow down. Tulsa struggles with physicality sometimes. So do you think they struggle with Auburn in the final here?
Yeah, a couple of things. Kevin Overton hit a 3 last night, and I immediately thought of what you said on yesterday's show. Because it was one of those, 35-foot, you just pull up and fire from wherever. He was 5 for 5 from 3 last night. Auburn hit 57% of their threes. They hit 63% of their twos, almost average 1.4 per possession. It was a great offensive game. And Illinois State, the difference in personnel showed up, right? And I kind of feel like, Adam, what we expected last night out of Tulsa, New Mexico, is what we're going to get on Sunday. Let me just start by saying you talked about genius moves by the NIT. I'll give you another genius move by the NIT here, is to schedule this game for 8 o'clock at night. Sunday's Easter Sunday. Nobody's watching this game in the middle of the day. People are going to be, families are together, Easter dinner, et cetera, et cetera. But 8 o'clock at night, after all the dust is settled, tune into the only game on television, and it's a championship game. So all eyes on Auburn. All eyes on all eyes on Tulsa. We talked yesterday at length about Auburn's first 3 games inside this tournament where they didn't look interested. Last night they looked interested. They took an Illinois State team that wanted to play slow and just dictated from the outset how that game was going to be played. Illinois State never really had a chance to play the style of game that they wanted to play. They're in chase mode the entire game. Here, Tulsa's more equipped for that, in my estimation. Tulsa's going to surround that 3-point line with their shooters, which Illinois State doesn't have. Illinois State is nowhere near the 3-point capabilities of Tulsa. We listed yesterday they have 4 guys, 39.5% or better, including David Green. And Tulsa didn't really have a good shooting night last night. As we mentioned top of the show, talking off air, it turned into more of a physical game than either one of us had expected. I think this one becomes more of a freelance style game. Auburn wants to out-athlete you. They can. But on Auburn's defensive end, I think Tulsa's got answers. Auburn is not the best defensive team as far as discipline is concerned. Stephen Pearl and the coaching staff can warn them, listen, these guys have great perimeter shooters. We got to stick to the 3-point line. But I don't know that Auburn's athletes necessarily hear everything that's being said to them where defense is concerned. So to me, Adam, this total is listed in the exact same place as it was last night. I think we can get back what we didn't get last night in that Tulsa, New Mexico game where over is concerned. These two teams, I'd expect it to be a little bit of up and down. There'll be no give up unless it's a 20-point contest with 2 minutes left. There'll be no give up from the side that's losing. It'll be just foul to the finish because nobody wants to lose a championship game. So you probably get some extension here. Auburn's listed as 4.5, bet up to 5 right now in a couple of spots. I can understand it. SEC against American Conference, American Athletic. But again, I'll say that Tulsa is firmly equipped to rattle the Auburn defense here with all of their shooters. I wouldn't be surprised if Tulsa gets out of the gate quickest in this particular game and Auburn starts to have to chase. So for me, at this point in time, I think it's going to be total over. I don't want it to raise up too much. I see 61 opener up to 61.5 and 62 even at one of the more popular outlets. So, yeah, that's the way I see it, Adam. I think we get a little get back for what we didn't get last night.
Rob, are you seeing a Tulsa spread? Are they posted? Have they posted a number for the side yet?
Yeah, it opened 4.5, remains 4.5 in a couple of spots, but up to 5 in a couple of spots. Auburn favored.
and
Oh,
and
Andrew.
he goes, I think they just made another 3-pointer. Well, yeah, like here's the thing. Auburn, I don't think I honestly don't think they cared more. I just think that like they are going to they're playing so free and loose offensively. Like not those a lot of those threes were not great shots. It's like Overton was hitting from 35 feet. There was on two occasions, Keyshawn Hall kind of just had the ball, couple crossover dribbles, didn't go anywhere, did like 3 crossover dribbles, pulled up and just hit a 3 in someone's face. Like what I realized as I was watching that was, all right, the guards from Illinois State don't have the length to contest that shot, even if they really wanted to. Johnny Kinzinger, Scunberg, like they were just being shot over essentially. And Auburn in that game, 12 for 21 from 3. So like it's not like they were getting great looks at the rim. Now, as they started to wear Illinois State down, they did get a couple second chance points, but the rebounding was still roughly even. Where the 22-point margin came from was Auburn shot 60% from 3, essentially 57.1%. And Illinois State just started turning the ball over because they got flustered playing from behind. Like you could tell Illinois State came out and played very good for like the first 10 minutes, like first 15 minutes of the game. Like Illinois State was shooting over 60% and they were still down 8. Like you could almost tell Illinois State was like, wait a minute, we're playing awesome right now. And we're almost down like double digits. Like that almost doesn't seem fair. And I think they just like there was a possession where Kinzinger tried to throw a pass into 3 people, throws it away. And then like suddenly a 6 to 8 point game that was actually being played at a very high offensive level turned into a 13-point game based on a couple of turnovers. What I was impressed with Tulsa last night, and the reason I talked myself off of the Tulsa side against New Mexico is I was worried that they were going to be out physical by the Lobos because New Mexico is a very good rim defense and Tulsa kind of struggles. If you can punch Tulsa in the mouth a little bit, that's when they're going to struggle. Even with Auburn putting up 88 points, I don't know that Auburn's just like taking it to you. I still think they're settling for tough outside shots. They can make them. They've proven they can make them. But if Tulsa can bring that sort of physicality that they brought last night against New Mexico, they're going to be right in this game because they're a little longer on the perimeter and they also can shoot the 3. They didn't even have their greatest shooting night against New Mexico. They still won the game and they were getting good looks though, Rob. I think like there's a world where a couple more of those 3s fall and Tulsa wins that game by 15 points. Like I think they were more dominant than that final score shows. And yeah, I haven't really made up my mind yet, but Tulsa plus the points is might be the play of the weekend for me. All right, let's we are gonna lock in a parlay like we do every day on this show. Now, there's no game today, so you may have to wait until some of these odds populate for you. Like I think the odds are just popping out right now for the NIT on most books, and then the other Crown semifinals. So Rob and I talked about Baylor and Oklahoma yesterday on yesterday's show. You can find that still up on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. Rob, we will circle back to that game if we have time, but I want to focus more on the matchup that we didn't know yesterday, which was West Virginia. Well, we now know it to be West Virginia and Kraton, the 2 winners of yesterday's Crown quarterfinal game. So I'll let you kick this one off. West Virginia, Kraton. What did you see last night? And who do you think has the edge on Saturday in this game?
Yeah, I overtime or not, I still think the edge goes to West Virginia. Creighton, Rutgers just wasn't a great opponent. They hung in for a while, but they just weren't a great opponent. Second half, their defense caved. kind of like what we mentioned the day prior to this game being played, that Rutgers just not a good defensive team. We didn't care. I remember you saying they're bringing everybody from New Brunswick. Everybody's coming to the game. And, we jokingly said it doesn't matter. Bring everybody. Bring more. Your defense still stinks. And it showed up in the second half. Kraton scored 51 points without Austin Schwartz in the game. He won't play tomorrow. Nick Graves had an outstanding game last night. Josh Dix. The team played well, but they played well against an inferior opponent. And here, despite the fact that they had overtime last night, they get a day of rest in between. I just think West Virginia is the better side here. I think West Virginia, you want to talk about a step up in class defensively between Rutgers and West Virginia. Well, there you go. It's a pretty steep step up for Kraton. So I don't know that Nick Graves is going to have the type of night that he had last night against that defense. I don't know that Kraton will have the type of second half shooting that they had. I mentioned they scored 51 in the second half. Probably not going to happen here against West Virginia. And also, Kraton just doesn't have Okori on their side. I mean, hey, we talked about you have to cut the head off the snake, and maybe Ross Hodgkin devise a game plan. He couldn't. Corey crushed him. 34 points, whatever it was. You couldn't stop him. But the rest of Stanford, after the late game collapse in regulation, just wasn't enough to overcome West Virginia. So for me, Adam, I see this number now. West Virginia opened 1, been bet up in a couple of places to 1.5, but mostly 1's still available. Total has come down from 135.5 to 134.5. Don't know that I'll get involved there, but I just think overall West Virginia's better. West Virginia shot the ball terribly from 3-point range last night. You can't shoot any worse. So I would expect some bit of an upgrade there in 3-point shooting. Also, I get that the quest to win this tournament for head coach McDermott will probably still exist and be motivational for Kraton. I don't even know that that's enough, honestly. I think Ross Hodge in his first year is trying to lay some type of foundation, and winning this tournament would be a great foundation for WVU in his first year. So I just think personnel-wise, they're better. Defensively, it's going to be Kraton wasn't even a 500 team this year. They weren't that good of a team. And so I'm going to go West Virginia here at this price. I don't know. I would expect maybe, Adam, I don't know, maybe I have a better feeling for this. Always trying to gauge where lines may go. There could be West Virginia money coming. I'm not sure, but I'd rather play it now at 1 than wait until it becomes 2 or 2.5, if in fact the West Virginia bandwagon gets rolling here in this one.
So to your point about McDermott, I kind of feel like he had his moment last night. Doug McDermott, his kid showed up, right? Doug McDermott came, I think, between NBA games. His family was there. I almost feel like that was the send-off, less than maybe winning this turn. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he wants to win. I don't think anyone wants to, goes into a game and ever wants to lose. But I almost feel like he had his moment after that game. Kraton didn't look great in the first half. They got outplayed for 20 minutes by Rutgers, if in my opinion. Second half, though, you could just tell that Rutgers was very much outclassed. West Virginia is not going to be. I watched the majority of that West Virginia game on my phone. Shout out to Hinkle for having great Wi-Fi, by the way. We'll take that all day. You never know. You're in a building that was built in 1928. You're always worried if the Wi-Fi is going to work, but or if you're going to have service. But shout out to Hinkle for great Wi-Fi. So Andy Lang and I were able to stream the end of that game, and it was kind of felt like West Virginia went to sleep in the second half a little bit and forgot that Okori could beat them by himself, and they were sort of gifted the opportunity. But you know what? Took advantage of it. And once you got to overtime, they took that game over. I do think ultimately the right side kind of won in terms of I thought West Virginia was better for longer stretches in that game. So who knows? Maybe they got the scare and they're able to sort of avoid that happening here. I'm with you. I think West Virginia is the better team. After watching some of the play last night, though, I don't know if I'm gonna. I don't know if I'll. I think I'm more inclined to get involved in the other game than I think I have a stronger opinion on the other game. So let's go there for a second while we've got a
Okay.
few minutes. So yesterday we started the conversation Baylor, Oklahoma, like as the line was coming out. I said it would probably be something like Oklahoma -1. That's exactly what it is. And I still, I have nothing has changed for me yesterday to today. I still lean the Sooners. I think they're the better team, and I think Baylor maybe benefited from Minnesota almost being like a Rutgers to a point where they were just outclassed. They had 6 guys. They couldn't match the physicality of Baylor and their ability to rebound the basketball. And I think Baylor just got by with kind of like you just playing their game to a 20-point win. So I kind of like the Sooners, Rob. I know you were on that same page yesterday. Do you have anything else to add, side or total Baylor, Oklahoma?
Yeah, I'm like you, Adam. I remain stuck to my initial opinion, which is this game will get over the number. Baylor, like you said, Minnesota was so inept offensively. 67-48 was more like a walkthrough. Baylor was more than happy to play it the way Minnesota likes to play it, low possession, slow up the floor. Baylor was better on the glass. Baylor was better everywhere. Oklahoma, I think, got their bad shooting or their rustiness in shooting out of the way over the course of the first 10 minutes of that game and then picked it up, wound up with 90, albeit in overtime. I think the game gets up and down a little bit more here. Baylor has scored, 80 plus in a lot of games this year. I think, I forget which team it was you mentioned yesterday, where you said that they kind of play to the style of the opponent. And I feel like that's Baylor. If you want to go slow, they'll go slow. If it's an up and down track meet, it'll be an up and down track meet. And I think that's what'll happen here. Oklahoma can score on Baylor. I think Baylor can score back. 157.5 hasn't been touched yet at all. So I think it's a good spot to get in a game where I would probably figure for 160 plus. This is their second opportunity at these rims, so the gym familiarity is there. I like Oklahoma Baylor over, and I do lean with you. I think Oklahoma is the best team in the field.
Yeah, and listen, I think you go back to that Oklahoma Colorado game. Almost feel like Oklahoma's being penalized for not blowing them out because they didn't have like 3 of their guys. When it's like you and I talked about this, Tad Boyle accepted an at-large to come to this. Like he could have very easily said no. And so I think like yeah, like Colorado ended up without maybe a couple of their starters, but I don't think it meant that they weren't like coming to compete and that they had a good game plan and just and played a good game. So for me, I'm not going to penalize Oklahoma for not winning by 10 to 15. And because of that, I think they're kind of undervalued here because, you know, like Slick Vic says, the Sooners were struggling against backups. Well, I would say maybe in the first half when they were like, because you also have to remember, like, Oklahoma's playing their first basketball in a couple weeks in the first half of that game. So, like, everyone's first game in this tournament. I mean, you look, Kraton had a bad half. Oklahoma had a bad half. Even Baylor's first half against Minnesota was not very good. It's just Minnesota was far worse. I mean, Baylor, I think I commented to you, Rob. I was like, man, we're really lucky to be up 5 at halftime with Baylor against Minnesota. They played a very disjointed first half. It's just Minnesota had 6 guys, couldn't make any shots. And then, of course, yesterday I admittedly watched very little of the Stanford West Virginia first half because I was at the Butler game. But like now everyone's got a game under their belt. The 4 teams that are still playing in this Crown tournament have a win. I think that like again, I'm not worried about that at all because I think Colorado just simply came to play and gave them a good game. And then Oklahoma figured it out and eventually won the game in the second half. They were the better team in the second half, and they were able to get there in OT. So I think Oklahoma is being penalized by the books for that, though. I think they should be a bigger favorite. So yeah, I'm going to be on this. I think I'm going to be on the Sooners. That's probably the most likely of me making a bet in one of these 2 games.
Yeah, it's more than reasonable, Adam, to use the combination of rustiness. Remember how hot Oklahoma closed the season. And then you have to get delayed 2 weeks before you pick up a basketball again in live competition. And the overlook angle. I mean, here we go. We're going to play 6 freshmen out of 8 guys. We can roll out the balls and win. They
Mhm.
didn't necessarily struggle with Colorado. They struggled with Hargis. Hargis kind of was like the Okori for Stanford in that game. And Hargis, he went to the line 16 times, and actually he was 15 for 15 and then missed that 16th free throw in overtime. But he was very vocal about wanting to be there because it's going to be his team next year. You know, Isaiah Johnson's out now. It's going to be his team. And they had something to prove. Where I think Oklahoma mentally focus wise, you know, Porter Moser probably has them. Now that they've advanced, I think they're probably in the right frame of mind here. And Baylor gets your attention a little bit more. Ex Big
Yeah.
12 competition. They get your attention a little more than 4 freshmen from Colorado, or 6.
Yeah, Rob Baylor, old Big 12 opponent for
Right.
Oklahoma. You know, they used to play all the time. Baylor, national champ 2021. It wasn't that long ago when Baylor was playing for a national title and sort of regularly in that conversation. So I agree with all those points. We have gotten to the end of the show. So this is about the time where we decide two-teamer or three-teamer. Do we take one final shot at the three-teamer? We've got 5 games to choose from. So we will choose from, we've got 2 Final Four games, 2 crown games, or the NIT final on Sunday. I will let you go first. What is your parlay leg best bet going to be?
Well, let me start with this. Can we both agree, or do we both agree on West Virginia against Kraton? If we do, we'll go 3-team and be common. If we don't, then I'm trying to find one that we would have common ground on to build a 3-teamer with.
Yeah, I think I could get down with West Virginia again, or Oklahoma. You know, I would agree on the Oklahoma side, but if you're going to use the total in that game, then we could use West Virginia. It's up to you. I don't know where we're leaning for that.
All right, let's use Oklahoma as our common ground play in the 3-teamer.
Okay,
minus the 1 point, because I can certainly see that, and then I'll use the Sunday night game, Tulsa Auburn over 161 as my end of this parlay. I think Tulsa Auburn are certainly going to get there.
Tulsa Auburn over 161.
161. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that was the total for yesterday's game. And that's one thing I was very surprised with New Mexico and Tulsa and the way those two teams play. I really thought there was going to be a lot of offense. I thought Tulsa would have really struggled with, you know, New Mexico's ability to you know, PNR and get to the rim. You know, I've noted this at times throughout the season. Tulsa is not not the best rim defense. They're not the most physical team. They're not a bad defensive team, but it's just like that's not really their MO. They want to play a little bit faster. They'd prefer to beat you, you know, 85-82 than get into a lower scoring game. And yet against New Mexico, they were the more physical team. They were the ones that threw New Mexico off, held them to 35.7% shooting from the field. So that was surprising to me, but I do think against Auburn, it reverts back to Auburn taking a lot of shots, not running a ton of shot clock. Tulsa's probably not going to see. Here's the other thing in this Tulsa Auburn game. I think they're going to be able to get some points at the rim if they want it, because Auburn's paint defense has been kind of not great in this tournament. I think Chase Walker's just a little bit slow. I think he was like, they were able to just sort of push him off, and he wasn't able to do what he does to Missouri Valley big men to Auburn. They were just too big. But Tulsa doesn't have that problem. You're not gonna push David Green around. David Green's gonna run you over. So yeah, Rob, I could see this one being the one where there's all the points. And now you're getting the same total as you were going to get last game.
Yeah, and to your point from yesterday, because you just mentioned Auburn interior defense, Keyshawn Murphy left the team, and that's why the interior defense is. We talked about Jovic yesterday not being a guy that necessarily is going to defend the rim. So, all right, we'll roll there and go ahead. Give us a third.
Yeah, Jovic has been fine from an offensive standpoint, but
Right.
but he's not the same type of defender. All right, with what's left, I'll go Yukon. I'm going to put Yukon +2 in the
Joey
parlay.
Cheese.
For my guy, Joey Cheese, I'm going to put Yukon +2. I make them a very slight favorite. I want to put a Final Four pick in. It's far from a lock. Okay, it is. Yeah, but I do think that there is enough of a edge getting the 2 that it's reasonable to put when you've got 5 games to choose from and you're trying to make a 3-teamer. So I'll take the bucket with Yukon. I want to pull up one comment before we sign off. AB cover says Trig and Vino, just want to say thanks for all your hard work over the season and dedication. We'll miss the live Monday, so just wanted to tell you all both thank you for the best season yet. We very much appreciate the feedback. That was the goal of this show. In addition to entice you guys to buy some picks from us, it was also to come on here and do a long form show where we kind of had the platform to like dig deep into college hoop and talk about the smaller teams, the lesser games. And I'll tell you what, we would not be allowed to do that if you guys didn't show up and comment and watch on a daily basis. So we appreciate you guys. We thank you because without you guys, without the viewers in here every day in the chat and the comments and the likes and the subscribes and the subscriptions to our package, which we did awesome. So we got to thank you guys for that as well. We would not be on the airwaves. So the thought is mutual, and appreciate the kind words right there. We will be on one final time. Rob and I will be on Monday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, to break down the national championship game and wrap up the season. Signing off the parlay one more time. We have Oklahoma -1, Yukon +2, and then God willing, we're live into Sunday for Tulsa, Auburn over 161. I'll be at that game at Gainbridge Fieldhouse on Sunday night. So I'll be rooting us home points in person. And again, if you're in Indy this weekend, hit me up, shoot me a DM. I'm going to be around. Met a couple people at Hinkle Fieldhouse last night, which is great. Love to meet you guys in person. So we'll see you Monday morning. Everyone enjoy the Final Four this weekend, and have a great weekend. We'll see you guys soon.